How you doing, baseball fans? Welcome to another episode of the Brushback with JP Ricciardi, brought to you by Cornerstone Bank, built on trust. Are you ready to open an account at Cornerstone? Go to cornerstonebank.com for more information. I'm John Arezzi, and joining me as we head into the finish of the baseball season, the Fall Classic is upon us. He is a baseball lifer. He is the former front office executive, the former GM, and the man who's ready for the World Series. JP, how you doing?
John, when I was a kid, I used to be so excited for the World Series. It was because television wasn't what it is today. Every game is on. You could find anything. So for us to watch the World Series was a chance to see the National League, which we never saw in Boston. I haven't been this excited for a World Series since 2015 when I was in the World Series with the Mets.
Wow.
I'm fired up. I can't think of more star power. I can't think of the best players being in the game. It's New York. It's LA. I hope we're not disappointed. We hope we don't get a build up to the greatest Super Bowl and it ends up being blah. But I got to believe with all the star power and everything that's going here, I think this is going to be a tremendous World Series and I'm excited to watch it.
Oh, yeah, I am as well. The playoffs are obviously over. We're going to get into that in a second, but the World Series has always been something. When I was a kid, and we're not that far apart in age, I'm a little older than you, JP. I remember I was in sixth grade. It was 1967, and my sixth grade teacher, Mr. Young, he brought the TV in because they were all day games to
Yeah.
see the Red Sox in that
Cardinals.
World Series against the Cardinals, correct? And it was just like this most amazing thing for me. I had been into baseball for about a year. And then I remember the 68 series. I told my mom I was sick that day. And then I stayed home from school to watch the Tigers and
Tigers
the
and
Cardinals.
Cardinals. Yeah.
Yes. And then, of course, 69, my dad surprised me. And you're staying home from school today. I was like, okay, good. I want to watch the World Series. He goes, no, you're going to go to the World Series. I got
Yeah.
tickets. It was game 4,
Yeah.
Seaver's game. So the World Series has always meant something very special. And as you know, I'm a diehard Mets guy, and even though the Mets aren't in it, I am looking forward to this World Series. I really am. I mean, it has everything. So we'll get into that. But first, before we get into the series, obviously the Mets are out, being defeated by the Dodgers in 6 games. It was a really good series. The Guardians looked a little outmatched by the Yankees winning in 5. So let's get your hot takes, first of all, on the 2 league championship series and how they concluded.
I thought the American League, the Yankees were just a better team. And I always look at it from the standpoint if I'm sitting in a dugout and I'm looking across at the other team, do they scare me? And I thought that the Guardians, they have a nice team. I think Ramirez is a star. I think Kwan is a very good player.
Yeah.
After that, it's a team made up of good players, but no one that made me sit there and say that guy really scares me. I think you got to see Class A as a closer when he had to pitch back-to-back days, when players saw him a little bit more. He coughed up a couple of big innings for them. So a lot had to go right for Cleveland to me to win that series. And I thought the Yankees played amazing. And I think anytime you go in a series and Soto, Stanton, and Judge do what they're capable of doing, you're not going to beat the Yankees. So I thought I was not surprised the Yankees beating Cleveland. I thought Cleveland had a good year, but I didn't think that they were going to beat the Yankees.
Yeah.
As far as the National League, the Dodgers, I thought that I was a little concerned when the Dodgers had the bullpen game because I thought it left an opening for the Mets, and the Mets played really, really well. I think what caught up with the Mets was the lack of starting pitching, and there was a couple of games where they were just totally blown out. I
Yeah, and
think,
they gave up 42. They had 42 walks. It's
yeah,
crazy.
I think the Dodgers' power and their supremacy played out over the Mets. I think the fact that the Mets got it to 6 games was pretty amazing on their part.
I do.
But a lot of good things happening in Queens. I think Cohen got the bug. He's been close. I think he's going to spend whatever he has to spend on starting pitching, and I don't think money's going to be an object for them. So I think it was a great step for the Mets. But John, we have the 2 best teams
Mm.
all year in baseball playing for the World Series, and that to me is what the game's all about.
Absolutely is. It's the Dodgers and Yankees in a matchup that Fox TV, first of all, is drooling over because of the rating potential, and I think it will be tremendous in the ratings when you have those two marquee guys. You have Judge on one side, Otani on the other. You got Soto, Stanton. You got an incredible Dodgers lineup with three MVPs at the top of the lineup. And it's a classic matchup. The first World Series between New York and LA since 1981, 43 years ago.
And
That
John, before not to cut you off, but
yeah.
in mentioning 1981, I think we need to pay our respects to Fernando Valenzuela, who who
Yes, I was going to
pitched,
bring him up.
who pitched in 1981 on that World Series team. And
Yeah.
I think, when you go back, I was in the minor leagues playing at that time, but when Fernando Mania came out, the hold it had on LA and he had a great career. He's a I know the Dodgers retired his number, but close to 150 wins. The guy had an amazing career, and it was just sad to hear that at 63 years old he passed away
Yeah.
because he really had baseball in the palm of his hand in that rookie year where he won the Cy Young and the Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, I think he's the only player ever to do that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's crazy.
So he
But
was
yeah, I remember that season in '81. It was he just came in and had dominated, winning his first 8 games. He'll never be forgotten. And in this World Series, I'm sure there'll be a special tribute to him by the Dodger organization before Game One, as it should be. But this series, I want to get your take on the history of these two teams who've now, this will be the 12th time that they've met in the Fall Classic.
So you think about it, I was just doing the thinking in my head. And I know in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and 80s, that's 5 decades, 50 years, the Yankees played the Dodgers at least once. Think about that. I mean, that's like you talk about bridging history in baseball. Now you're starting a whole new generation of Yankee Dodger fans. But to go back and think of the history, I mean, you're talking about the Gil Hodgeses, the Jackie Robinsons, the history of our game, the Yogi Berras, the Mickey
Yeah.
Mantles. And I think the Dodgers in '55 was the first time they beat the Yankees. They won the World Series with Johnny Padres.
Yes.
So it's just an amazing history. And then the Dodgers move out to LA, and I believe in '63 the Dodgers beat the Yankees. And then I know in the '70s, '77, I believe it was, they played again. And then in '81 the Dodgers beat them. But it's just an amazing history. So I guess for someone like me who's nostalgic and loves the game and the history of the game, I can't think of two better teams to be playing in the World Series. And I can't think of not only two better teams, but think about, you could say Mantle, you could say DiMaggio, you could say you know Duke Snyder. The greatest names are now matched up for this year with the Judges and the Otani. So baseball was really blessed this year to have this type of World Series.
Yeah, and who can forget the '77 World Series when Reggie Jackson hits 3 home runs
Yeah,
on 3 consecutive pitches? I
yeah.
mean, there's so much history there. That's why I think that the whole country, every baseball fan and the major markets, the Fox TV, this is going to be epic. We hope it doesn't disappoint, of
Right.
course, but I think we're heading towards a very memorable World Series, and we're going to be back with JP's hot takes on this Yankees Dodger World Series right after this word from our sponsor, Cornerstone Bank.
Hello, I'm Steve, crisis aversion specialist, and by that I mean parent. My favorite tool of the trade? Right Student Checking from Cornerstone Bank, offering a dramatic reduction in calls like, Dad, I can't afford the campus ATM. Dad, do I have a spare? And of course, it's me on Nick's phone, mine's in the pond. These days, they're busy saving money and discovering autonomy. If you have a student, start them banking right and enjoy the silence.
Dad?
I was never here.
All right, JP, let's get into this matchup. Talk to us about the strengths, the weaknesses of both teams from the pitching, the bullpens of the clubs, and the star power of the offense.
I'd like to tell you it's going to come down to offense, but I think it's going to come down to pitching. And I think it's going to come down to what pitchers post best. I think if Garrett Cole and Rondon can pitch the way that they pitch, I think the advantage is to the Yankees. I think if Flaherty can somehow get back to what he did in the NLCS I think he now gives the Dodgers a little bit of an edge in the sense that maybe he comes back twice and is capable of pitching the way he's capable. I think Yamamoto is going to have to give them some depth. I think Bueller is going to have to give them some depth. So my question is more with the Dodgers starting pitching than it is with the Yankees starting pitching. So for me, the advantage with the starting pitching goes to the Yankees. I think the bullpens are pretty much the same. I think the offenses are pretty much the same. So if you're asking me where the edge is, I think Garrett Cole is the key to this World Series. And I think Garrett Cole is A, Rondon is B plus. I think if those guys can pitch the way they're capable, I think that they have the ability to be the difference maker. And if you're asking me to pick,
I'm not going to ask you yet. I'm going to wait till at the very end to get that prediction.
But that's where I think the advantage is going to be to the Yankees. Now, there's going to be someone in this series that is a Brian Doyle, that is a Gene Tennis that comes out of nowhere and plays really, really well. Who that is, I couldn't tell you, but there will be that guy that no one expected. So once again, John, I think it's going to be an amazing, amazing series.
Yeah, it's the big stage for sure, and there's always a surprise that comes out of each and every World Series. Somebody steps up that you didn't expect, like you said. Yep. But I'm really excited about just the vibe of Ohtani versus Judge. I mean, that to me is the most fascinating part of this World Series because you got these two prolific players. Now, Ohtani is I've never seen, like you said, he's the best player we've ever seen. And just seeing him against the Mets in that playoff atmosphere, and he's just, there's nobody like him. He's like a machine. It's like he's not even real. And then Judge, of course, I mean, he's just this gigantic presence and the amazing home runs. And then you throw Soto into the mix, and it's, I can't wait for it to get started. I really can.
Judge is like the Terminator, you just, but once again, you go back to World Series when you think about Mantle and you think about Mays and you think about the biggest name. We got the biggest names in baseball right now playing in our World Series. That Dodger lineup is incredible. That Yankee lineup is incredible. The pitching is good. The pitching is not probably the Koufax, Drysdale, Gibson type, but the pitching is still very good. I think whoever does the little things in this series is really going to show up and it's going to play out. But, man, you talk about star power. You got Hollywood in L.A. and you got Broadway in New York. You couldn't ask for anything better. I mean, the buildup is great. I'm so excited to have the World Series start.
Yeah, and then the fan bases, of course, of both of these franchises.
It's going to be
nuts. Yankee Stadium, Dodger Stadium. They're nuts. It's going to be crazy. It really is. So we really look forward to the series. JP's Hot Takes is brought to you by Percy's Appliance Outlet, featuring brand name appliances at up to 80% off regular retail prices. They're Worcester's largest dealer of home appliances and electronics, and they have been serving Worcester for over 80 years. Go to Percy's.com. Check out all of their great everyday deals on refrigerators, electronics, washers, dryers, bedding, and so much more. Call 508-438-6800. Same day or next day delivery options are available. Percy's, they are your 80% off appliance outlet. And we're going to be back to get JP's prediction on the winner of this World Series right after this word from Percy's.
Percy's Mattress Gallery, featuring the finest names in quality mattresses from Serta, Simmons, Beauty Rest Black, and more, all at the guaranteed lowest prices with Percy's Price Match Guarantee. Percy's offers fast, expert, and professional delivery, installation, and removal. Shop in store or look for the green in-stock buttons online at Percy's.com, where long-term interest-free financing is available with the click of a button. The Mattress Gallery at Percy's, first on Gold Star Boulevard in Worcester.
Okay, JP, it's time for your prediction for this fall classic, Yankees versus Dodgers. Who's going to win?
I think the Yankees win in 7, John. I think it's going to be an amazing World Series. I think the Yankee pitching overall from a starting standpoint is a little deeper than the Dodgers. And I think in the end, that's going to play out. Yankees in 7.
Yankees in 7. All right, we're going to wait and see how this World Series unfolds. I'm right there with you with the Yankees. Even though I'm a Mets guy, I have never hated the Yankees. And I just love the history. I love the legacy. And I want to see New York beat LA. I really do. I really do. So I'm excited, and I'm going to go right there with you. And I think it's going to go 7 games myself. I think it's
I
going to
hope
be a
so.
long
I hope
series.
so. I think that'll be a lot of fun.
It'll be great for the game. It'll be great for the networks, the ratings, everyone. So we look forward to that. All right, JP, batter up with JP's next, but we have to tell you first about our sponsor of this segment, the Worcester Bravehearts. You can experience New England's most anticipated sports summit, where tomorrow's industry leaders connect with today's game changers, dive into cutting-edge strategies, innovative partnerships, and exclusive opportunities that will elevate your career in sports management. This will be at the New England Sports Summit. It takes place on February the 14th at the Hart Center at the College of the Holy Cross, and it's presented by the Worcester Bravehearts. Make your plans now to attend. We'll be having more information about this summit as weeks progress. Go to newenglandsportssummit.com for all the information you will need to be part of this great event. And now it's time for Batter Up with JP. He's been a part of the YES Network since 2010, providing analysis on the Yankees pre- and post-game shows. He's a longtime columnist as well, covering the Bronx Bombers, and has worked at the New York Times for 22 years. He's an author, co-writing books with Derek Jeter, David Cohn, and Paul O'Neill. He's also the host of the podcast Yankees News and Views. Let's welcome to Batter Up with JP, Jack Curry. Jack, welcome to Batter Up.
Excited to be here. Thanks for that intro. I appreciate that. And there's nothing better than talking baseball as we have the World Series right in front of us. This is fantastic.
So my intro to Jack is to tell you that he's one of the best guys I've ever been around. First class, has always handled himself with class. I've always enjoyed talking with him, and I'm so thankful that you came on the show, Jack. Good to see you.
JP, I would say the same thing about you. I know we're probably not supposed to give our conversations from off air, but before we came on, you and I were talking about those good old days and having those conversations in the press box, on the field. And we all love this sport so much. When you meet someone who shares that love, I think we all gain from those relationships and those conversations.
So we're going to jump right into it. And what I like to do in the podcast is I want you to tell a little bit about yourself. I know your background, but there's a lot of kids who listen. There's a lot of people that want to get in your business. So, people turn on the YES Network and they see you and they think you started there. Tell them your climb, how, first of all, why you wanted to cover baseball, how you went about it, and kind of give us a Reader's Digest version of your background so kids out there realize that people actually did pay their dues.
So I'm going to start at the beginning, but I'll go fast. 7th grade, I'm 12 years old. I approached a teacher, an English teacher, and said, how come we don't have a school newspaper? And he said, do you want to start one? And JP, that helped light the flame. And to this day, I'm very thankful that that teacher did that, because when that little tiny newspaper came out in St. Anne's Elementary School in Jersey City, New Jersey, and everybody was reading my byline, I wanted to be a sports journalist from that moment on. Of course, I had the baseball dream like everybody else. I started 1 year in high school. I went to one practice at Fordham, left that practice, and went and signed up for the school newspaper and the school radio station the next day. So when I talk to kids, I know that we don't all know what we want to do when we're 12 or 13, but I can honestly tell you that I was tunnel vision from the time I was a teenager to figure out a way to be a sports journalist, to be around this sport. And as you mentioned, you don't just walk out of college and get a job at ESPN or the YES Network. I probably covered 200 Little League games while I was in college with an internship for the Jersey Journal. And then I covered college sports at the Star Ledger in New Jersey. And then I started at the New York Times answering phones and getting coffee. But the thing about the New York Times is I was never going to let them kick me out. Once I got my foot in the door, I said, I'm going to impress them enough. And in about 3 or 4 years there, I was covering baseball, and I stayed there for 22 years. The print business was going in a direction that I didn't necessarily love, and I transitioned over to TV, and I've been at YES for the last 15 years. So that's in a nutshell. But JP, you know this. It's work ethic, it's aggressiveness, it's curiosity, it's persistence. And then when you're in a market like New York, there's a level of competition that you'd better be ready for, because I started out on the Yankee beat. Michael Kay, John Heyman, Joel Sherman were all on the beat. I'm sure all the people listening to your podcast know who they are and what they've accomplished. And for a long time, I got my head handed to me. And you get tired of getting beat on stories. And the way you get better is by competing against people who are better than you. And that helped turn me into the journalist that I became.
And all those guys, they got a hard passion for baseball. I love being around. Anytime I was covering the Mets or the Yankees, I love talking to all of those guys just because of what you said, the passion. So along the way, you're building your resume, you're coming along. Who were some of the guys who helped you get to where you're at?
There was a New York Times writer, Malcolm Moran, who covered college sports, and he was a Fordham alum. And he came to campus to speak to us once, JP. And this was not some elaborate thing in a classroom or a theater. He showed up at my roommate and my dorm because we were the co-sports editors. He spoke to about 6 of us. And to this day, I'm forever thankful that he took time out of his schedule to go talk to a couple of 19 or 20-year-olds and just give us the lay of the land and let us know how difficult it was going to be. A lot of times you have to tell young journalists, I grew up in northern New Jersey. I grew up in Jersey City. Of course, I want to work in the New York market. That might not always work out. You might have to go to X market or Y market in order to work your way back. And that was something that he said that I appreciated. And a second gentleman was also a New York Times writer, Dave Anderson, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist. He came to campus once as well, and again, just filled in a lot of the blanks. But more importantly, JP, and I try to do this with young journalists now too, they allowed me to contact them after they left. And that's one thing I always tell students or people who want to do this. If you meet somebody, see if they'll give you their email address. See if they'll give you their cell phone number. There's a young kid who got an internship at YES, in part because 5 or 6 years ago, I spoke to his high school class, 30 kids. I said, if any of you want to continue asking questions about journalism, just stop by and ask for my email address. He was the only kid who asked. And things have moved well for him since then. So it's just a reminder, connections are such a big part of what we're trying to do in this business.
So being a North Jersey guy, were you a Yankee fan growing up?
So I have to tell you, in all honesty, I'm born in 1964. My brother was born in 1962. Well, who do you think my brother was rooting for in 1969? The Mets.
Yeah.
So I start to become aware of baseball 70, 71. Your older brother is cheering for the Mets. You're going to root for the Mets. So it was definitely, I was a Tom Seaver fan, Bud Harrelson. But I will also tell you, JP, when I started to do this, I understood very quickly you have to be objective. And the first baseball game I covered for the New York Times, there was an older writer, Joe Durso. He's actually in the writer's wing of the Hall of Fame. And he said, you realize you're not a fan anymore, right? You realize you're an objective reporter and your job is to tell the story. And I so appreciate him doing that because I always tell people when they say, what are you a fan of? I say, I'm a fan of great stories and fast games. And that really is the truth. I can't even to this day, I can't watch a Yankee game. For instance, that Soto at-bat against Gaddis. I'm watching that with Bob Lorenz, John Flaherty, an ex-Major League catcher, our boss, John Filippelli. JP, I'm watching it the way you would have watched it as a scout. Oh, gosh, he just fouled off that changeup. Oh, what are they going to do here? Yankee fans are watching that ready to pull their hair out. That's not the way I'm watching a game. I'm watching it for information and to be able to analyze what's happening.
That has got to be the hardest thing as a reporter, a writer, to be able to remove yourself because you get to know these guys. You spend time with them. You know maybe some things most people don't know. It's got to be a hard thing to stay objective.
I will tell you that it's not hard for me anymore. Early on, because of the excitement of being at a major league ballpark, being in a press box. 2 years ago, as I mentioned, I was probably covering a little league game, and now I'm around these guys. So in my 20s, I would agree with you that there was a separation that you had to remind yourself of. Now, my goal is for us to have great shows. I can't control anything that's
Right.
happening on the field. When the Yankees play well and they get to the World Series, obviously that's wonderful for our product, but it's not something that I struggle with at all. I really understand what my job is. And you're right, the personal relationships. I mean, I wrote books with Jeter, Cohn, and O'Neill. Clearly, I
Sure.
like those guys and we have friendships and relationships. Aaron Boone is one of the nicest guys I've ever met in baseball. But JP, if Aaron Boone makes a
Yeah.
bullpen decision that I have to criticize in the post game, and I don't even like to use the word criticize, I always say analyze.
Yeah.
I don't think because you're saying I don't think they should have stayed with pitcher X for that at bat. That's your opinion. And I've had this back and forth with managers and GMs and players along the way. I prefer to say analyze. I don't think just because you disagree with someone means you're criticizing them.
Yeah. And I think that's a valid point. So you've been covering the Yankees for so long. You're close to them. I'm so excited about the World Series, and I can tell you from a baseball guy, being in 4 World Series with the three with the A's and one with the Mets. That's the most excited I've been from being involved with a team. But from an outside fan perspective, outside of when I was a kid, this is the most exciting World Series that I'm looking forward to. And I don't know if anybody who has a finger on the pulse more than you do about the Yankees. So, what do you like about the Yankees in the World Series?
I like their starting pitching edge. I think that they have the edge where Boone could and should get 6, maybe 7 innings from Garrett Cole in game 1. I don't think Dave Roberts is getting that out of Flaherty. I think Dave Roberts is getting less than that out of Yamamoto and Buehler. Can Rodon give the Yankees 6 innings? If he's efficient, he could. So I think when I look at the bullpens, I think they're more even. I think the Yankees can exploit that edge in the starting rotation, get into that Dodgers bullpen. And as we saw in the Cleveland series, the more you see these elite relievers, JP, and you know that, and it even happened on the Yankee side with Luke Weaver giving up a couple of home runs. The more you see them, the less of a mystery they are, and the more familiar they become. So I think the starting pitching is an edge for the Yankees. I think that when you look at the stars on both sides, I mean, here's Ohtani, here's Judge, here's Soto, here's Betts. I'll give you a Freeman, you throw a Stanton in there. So you start to look at the secondary group of players. I think the Yankees are thrilled with what Volpe has given them. But, I mean, you look at some of those Dodgers secondary guys, and I don't know how you can call Max Muncy a secondary guy when he got on base 12 straight times. But I think I might give the Dodgers a little bit of an edge there. I just think that this is the Yankees' year too, JP, and I think it's going to be a great series like you. You haven't asked me, but I'll beat you to the punch. I've been saying Yankees in 7. I think we're going to get an epic series, but I think the Yankees starting pitching, and I think the lineups they both grind so much through at-bats. I think the lineup that sort of wins at-bats more is going to win the game. I said this on a previous show we did, and I know how big a sports fan of all sports you are. We always hear in football, win the game in the trenches. I think the team that win this series, the in the trenches part of that is those long grinding at-bats, that
Yeah.
Soto-esque at-bat, a Stanton at-bat, a Betts at-bat, an Ohtani at-bat. The team that has the more of those is going to win.
I would agree with you. I have the Yankees in 7, and my viewpoint is if Boone is able to, which I think he should be able to, 5 of the 7 he's going to be able to pitch Rodon and Cole. So that gives the Yankees now. If Cole and Rodon pitch like they did earlier, I think the Yankees win this thing maybe earlier. But I don't see the Dodgers starting pitching being able to match up. I think the other thing I found interesting was, and you've been doing this a long time, how many times when you get in a big series, when you think about the Yankees in the playoffs, Judge, Soto, and Stanton all performed unbelievable. Usually in a series, I mean, Mickey Mantle had bad World Series.
Yeah.
So What do you think the capability of those three guys continuing to be so well off? Because I know in short series anything can happen, but they seem to be locked in.
I hope I have this right, JP, because we get fed so many stats from our great research department. I'm pretty sure that so far in the postseason, Stanton, Judge, and Soto have 9 home runs. And I think the rest of the Yankee lineup either has 1 or 2. So right there, when you talk about power, and as much as some fans want to scream anti-home run, you and I both know that if you win in the postseason, the team who the majority of their runs come from home runs, more often than not, they win. I think it's 85% or something like that. I just think, and you can say this about the beginning of the Dodgers lineup too, JP, but I just think when you look at that gauntlet that the Yankees throw out at you, Flaherty is going to sit down in a meeting and understand that Torres, who has had a great 2 months, Torres and Soto, JP, in the first inning of postseason games have reached base 15 of 18 times. So you talk about putting pressure on. So there's your pressure, and then here comes Judge and Stanton. And though while Judge has 2 home runs and his swings have gotten progressively better, I actually think he's primed for an even better World Series. He's got 8 homers in 10 lifetime games against the Dodgers. He loves hitting at Dodger Stadium. So I just think it's a gauntlet that for any pitcher to try and navigate is going to be very challenging.
You know, one thing I learned in 2015, we played the Dodgers to go to the World Series. And Dodger Stadium, most of the time, the ball doesn't jump too much. But if it's warm in Los Angeles, and I haven't seen what the temperatures are, the ball absolutely flies out of that park. So I don't know what the temperature is for the next few days, but that would be something to keep an eye on because Judge plays really well in that ballpark.
I saw some guys doing some live stand-ups from there, and it looked very sunny and bright. And it's LA, so I'm guessing you're right. I'm guessing we'll probably see something in the 70s or 80s, and that's a very interesting point by you. And I don't know if you've heard this too, JP, from your time there in conversations with players. I've yet to meet a pitcher or a hitter who doesn't love being in that ballpark. David Cone said when he stood on the Dodger Stadium mound, he felt like he was 6'11", never mind 5'11". He said he felt so tall on that mound, it felt like he was going downhill.
I don't know how you feel, but Dodger Stadium was, and it grew on me as I got out there more. It's one of my favorite ballparks to go to. It stands the test of time. I mean, they were really. I just got back from Italy. I saw the Roman Coliseum. That's what that reminds me of. It stands the test of time. So
you talk about stadiums. As a guy who was more Yankee related, and then I was a national writer for the Times, but I was still kind of focused more on the East Coast. Dodger Stadium was the last major league stadium that I got to. And you're right. It was breathtaking when I finally got a chance to go there. And I forget what year it was, but man, it just 62, right? I think it was the year it was built.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal.
I love going there. You know, one guy I wanted to talk to you about because there's a Brian Doyle in here somewhere. You know, there's a Gene Tennis, there's a Brian Doyle. Someone's going to do something that none of us have looked at. If one guy I have concerns with the Yankees, and I know he's probably not going to hurt him that much, but they really need him defensively. And he's looked a little shaky defensively. I just lost the first baseman, Rizzo. Rizzo's looked a little shaky defensively. Have you got any concerns about that?
So he has talked about just playing through the pain, and he has to have a high pain tolerance. What's interesting to me, JP, is I was in the studio with John Flaherty when Rizzo first fractured his hand. And Flaherty talked about the inability to hold a bat. And he said as a lefty, that's his bottom hand. But what has happened is Rizzo's been fine swinging, but since the glove is on that hand, I think when he has to make a play or there's the potential that you might fall down and land on that hand, he has clearly been a different first baseman. I've never seen this before. When he catches from him, other first basemen might do it. When he catches a throw from an infielder, he's got the other hand behind the glove, sort of bracing for whatever impact comes. I think they've made it this far with him, JP. I think they will continue down that road. If Rizzo were to go to Boone in a one-run game, say, listen, I don't know if I should be out there. Maybe you see a Birdie or a Cabrera late in the game. It would seem so crazy for that to happen with a guy who has multiple gold gloves, but we know that he's playing with a very injured hand right now.
He defensively, he's so good. There was 2 plays. It was a one hopper to his left that he kind of shied off of, and I was telling my son, Rizzo, he can't be right. It must be the impact that, unless you catch that ball in your web, the impact's going to be on your hand. And there was another ball to his right. He just didn't look like Rizzo. So I just wonder if late in the game, if Boone is preparing, and I don't even know, is Birdie's played there not a lot. So are they carrying Ben Rice? Is he going to be on the roster?
I doubt it.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll add him. What I could imagine them doing is adding Nestor Cortez for the World Series roster and shedding a position player. And at this point, it would probably be Trent Grisham. He hasn't played. Dominguez has been a pinch runner a couple times. At least they've used him. Trent Grisham looms as a defensive replacement, but JP, I don't think they're taking any of their outfielders out. They're not taking Soto and Judge out, and they like what Verdugo has given them. I'll also throw in one more play. There was the play where the ball, Leiter didn't field it right away, and it kicked off his leg, and he had to run toward the first base line into foul territory, and he finally got it, and he just shoveled it to Rizzo. Now, there was an awkwardness about it, and he was really close to him, but Rizzo was backing away from it, and that could have been disastrous for them. They ended up getting out of that, and Leiter did a really nice job. I think he got 5 outs, but you're right. I think Anthony Rizzo would admit that he's playing hurt over there. So he's got to figure out a way to be at his best while playing hurt.
So you're the Yankees, you're Boone, you're sitting there. When you look across the other dugout from what you've seen, what do you think concerns the Yankees? Obviously, we know the good players, but what do the Dodgers bring to the table that make you a little worried if you're the Yankees?
JP, I think Boone looks across that dugout, and when the lineup is assembled, I think he believes he's looking in the mirror because he knows what their hitters can do to his pitchers. Garrett Cole could have great stuff on Friday, but if he has 4 at-bats in the first 3 innings that are 7, 8, 9 pitches, suddenly the Yankees are saying, wow, is he even going to get through 6? They can do damage. They can do damage fast, or they can also prolong it where they make you work. These 2 teams are leading the postseason in walk percentage. The Yankees are first. The Dodgers are second. They are not going to swing at pitches out of the zone. They are going to make you throw strikes. So I think when Boone looks over there, I think that's the first thing that he thinks about.
Do you think Cole is capable of taking the ball 3 times and giving them 6 innings?
I heard you mention that earlier when you said Cole and Rodon in 5 of 7. I'm going to speculate and guess that they don't do that with Cole. I know in 2020 he did it. He pitched on 3 days rest in a do-or-die situation in a Game 5 for the Yankees. I don't know if they're going to ask him to do that. I think they'd be content if he got anywhere between 18 and 21 outs in a Game 1. And then by the time you got to a Game 4, if they could get Heel to the 5th inning, I think they would trust their bullpen. I know there's a time where you and I covered baseball and 1-4-7 would have been a no-brainer, but I don't think they're going to go in that direction. I think you'll see Schmidt in 3, Rodon in 4, and Cole back for 5.
Do you think that's a byproduct of how many starts and innings these guys now have under their belt?
I just think it's the way that the game has maneuvered, and even someone like Cole, who is considered a workhorse. I don't want to speak for Garrett, and he's going to talk. What's today? Thursday, right? I believe he's going to talk at Yankee Stadium. I'm at Dodger Stadium today, so I'm sure he might even be asked that. But I know from talking to him how meticulous he is and how scheduled he is, and I just wonder if he believes he's got 100 pitches in his arm for Game 1, and he's got 100 for Game 5. But I would also say he'd be a pitcher for you in Game 7. Maybe you'd get an inning out of him. Maybe you get 2 innings out of him. That would be my guess. They would go in that direction.
From just kind of kicking back to the Dodgers, I don't see their starting pitching. I see that being the Achilles for them. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, JP, let's talk about, before we talk about who they have, let's talk about who they don't have. Kershaw, Glasnow, Stone, May, Gonsolin. That's a full starting rotation right there. If you had that as your starting rotation on any team, you say, wow, that team might win 90 games. So I read some comments from Flaherty after his last start from the Mets. His velocity was down, and he talked a lot about his timing and being out of sync. And I believe him. I don't think he was lying. That can happen. But I also wonder that if the Yankees do start to get to him early and they've got some traffic on the bases in those first couple of innings, you know the way the momentum shifts in these series. But I was actually was texting with a friend, John Heyman, somebody we mentioned earlier, and I don't think I'm breaking any news here. Cole is the most important guy in this series for the Yankees, because if he goes out and dominates in game one, you have just sent a message that their starting pitching is better. No matter what your bullpen is, no matter what your lineup is, they just threw the first punch. So I agree with you. I think the Dodgers are short, and I think it puts a lot of pressure on Roberts, and he's been amazing. He's been amazing with maneuvering his bullpen and knowing when to go to guys, and also knowing when not to go to guys. Maybe when a game was slipping away and, okay, I'm going to save my bullets for tomorrow.
I think that bullpen game, though, if they go that route, to me, and maybe I'm just old school, I just think it taxed your bullpen so much. And it's not even a tax it for that game, but it's for what's down the road. You almost gas it out. That's a concern of mine.
And instant pressure, right? Each one of those guys that comes in has to feel as if that's an 8th or 9th inning situation where you're asking, I don't know, 4, 5, or 6 guys to be perfect. Do the math. It's easier to ask 1 or 2 or 3 guys to be perfect than to ask 5 or 6 guys to be perfect.
So you've covered the Yankees for so long. You had those, what I would call the corporate Yankees. And, unfortunately for me as a GM, there's a group that I had to compete against. The business like of the Posada, the Jeter, the Pettits, and now you've got a different Yankee team, and you've got you got the Chisholm guy, you've got Verdugo that are a little not corporate type Yankees. How do you like this team? How do you like the makeup of this team?
It's a very close team. There's a lot of chemistry, and you talked about Chisholm, and obviously he was acquired at the trade deadline. Verdugo, it's his first year. So putting those two off to the side for a second, what I noticed about this team in spring training, JP, was when you were walking around the clubhouse and talking to guys, how many of them had planted themselves in Tampa well before spring training. And there was almost an internal mandate that 82 and 80 was unacceptable. How do you change that around? How do you turn that around? Well, it starts with a foundation that began in Tampa. And I think it started with Judge. Judge was there early. A lot of what revolves around that team revolves around Judge. He's the captain. He's the leader. And I think that really carried into the season with them, that they were not going to let 2023 happen again. Now, that being said, they had a stretch this year where they were 11 and 24. And they were passable or gettable then, and the Orioles had their own struggles this year. But then when you get through that 11 and 24 and it doesn't bring you down, I think that makes you stronger. So if I were to describe this team, I would describe them as very close-knit, free-spirited team. They are, if you see their clubhouse in the moments after a win, the music is pumping. They hand out a wrestling WWE championship belt for the player of the game. And I think all those little things during the course of a long season, you need some of that fun stuff. And I think they've found some of that.
It's funny, just as an observer from the outside looking in, it seems like Stanton has been the happiest I've ever seen him as a Yankee. Now, I know he's playing great, but just his body language, it just exudes like I'm really comfortable and happy.
I think people forget how successful a career Giancarlo Stanton has had. And yes, the injuries have beset him with the Yankees, and that made him a fan not so favorite at times. But if you look at his career, this guy's going to end up with more than 500 home runs as long as he stays healthy. He's got the MVP. He had the 59 homers. I think you're right, JP. I think that happiness stems from he got to be on the field. He got to stay on the field, and whatever he ended up doing, 27 homers, 80 runs batted in, something like that. But he played close to 130 games. And then the switch flips in October, or the calendar turns, whatever phrase you want to use. He is so locked in. And I don't know, I'd like to turn and ask you a question. Have you ever seen a guy who could have the ugliest swing in an at-bat and then turn around and hit a ball 450 feet?
He just looks like he's locked in. I mean, there's no other way to say it. But when he's hot, he hits them in bunches, and he's hot right now. And I almost would call him a cripple hitter in the sense that you make that mistake. People always say, "Oh, geez, he crushes I think he hits breaking balls better than he hits fastballs, and I think it's just the way he's built. But I'm actually happy to see him playing so well because he got dinged up with so many bad comments about not doing this and not doing that, and he was such a good player in Miami, and then he got to New York and he got banged up, but he really seems to be just. All I could say is he just seems to be happy. It looks like a group that's happy. And, boy, you got those three guys. I mean, then you throw Soto in there, and it seems like Soto has come in and hasn't taken, like, I'm not going to try to take Judge's title. I'm going to just kind of fit in here. And he seems like he's kind of just melted in really well.
Yeah, it's been the mutual admiration society with those two guys. I forget which game it was, but there was a game or a couple of games where Judge did X and Soto did Y. They both had amazing games. And Judge said after the game, Soto is the best player in the league. So the reporters went to Soto and said, Judge just called you the best player in the league. And Soto said, well, he's the best player in the world. So I got a kick out of that they tried to one-up each other with compliments. I can't speak to how Soto was in San Diego, but JP in New York, he is so comfortable and so happy. And I'm also not naive enough to think that is going to be the only reason he would potentially re-sign with the Yankees. But this guy dashes onto the field to start a game, and those bleacher creatures, they treat him like a long-lost brother coming back after not seeing him for 10 years, and he loves that. He gets excited about that. I do think when he's sitting down and making his decisions with Scott Boras in the offseason, and I know there are other great environments to go to, I think that's going to be somewhere in his mind about, wow, this team got to the World Series, maybe might even win a World Series, and look at how much it embraced me. Maybe that's the place I need to be.
I wish more players would think along those lines. I remember someone was saying that Bryce Harper really didn't want to go to Philly, but man, has a team in a city embraced a guy? I mean, it's the perfect fit for Bryce Harper. And Soto, I mean, the money's going to be the money. He's going to get the money. But that's why I thought Judge signing with the Yankees was important for baseball. I thought it meant a lot that this is a kid who came up through the system. He just needed to stay to be a Yankee. And I think it's worked out pretty good, don't you?
I do. And he's got his $40 million a year. He's happy. He is the leader of this team, 58 homers or whatever he hit this year. And you're right. That's another thing for Soto to think about. Who's going to surround you in the lineup? You know you're going to have Judge hitting behind you. That might be the best place to hit in all of baseball.
So we got you caught up on the Yankees, and I won't keep you much longer. But I do want to pick your brain on this. You've been covering the game a long time. You've seen it from a lot of different angles. What do you still love about the game, and what are your concerns about the game?
Well, I still love the competition and just how talented these players are, JP. One thing I always try and remind myself, so I have to sit in a studio after a game, and sometimes you have to talk about a play that wasn't made. These guys are so talented, and they throw so hard, and they hit the ball so far. Are fundamentals lacking sometimes? Yes, that would probably be one of the things I would get to. But I never want to underestimate just how talented these 780 major leaguers are that we get to see on a daily basis. So that always stands out for me. I want to mention the passion of fans. I have a job in part because people love this sport so much. And on the days where I go to Yankee Stadium to do some reporting, I appreciate how much the fans are invested in what a team does. Concerns about the sport, I think you always want to see the game played at a crisp level and at a level where the mistakes are few and far between. Mistakes are going to happen. But I think when plays get lost fundamentally, and I'm not saying everybody in a lineup has to be able to bunt. That's not what I'm going to say. But sometimes you'll see, well, that rundown play maybe should have happened that way, or where was the cutoff man on that play? And I covered Jeter. I wrote a book with Jeter. I never saw him not run hard to first base. And I know that always sounds like you're the old man shouting at the clouds, but you get to play this game once as a major league player. I think you can run 90 feet, even if you happen to roll over the ball and hit it to second base.
Yeah. It's funny. I was talking to Jeter one time, and I'd seen him play since he was an A-ball. And I told him that. I said, look, I know everybody comes up and they kiss your ass and they tell you this and that. I said, but from a baseball guy, I want to tell you, I've never seen you not run the ball out. I said, my times on you were 4.2 to 4.3 from the time you were 19 years old to the time you were 30 years old. I said, so just the fact that you play the game hard is a great example to all, the other guys, especially the kids who are coming up. You guys do a great job on the YES Network. I watch a lot of YES Network games, from the announcing to the analysis. What's it like to work with that group? I love listening to those guys. I think they bring a lot to the table, and I think I don't have any skin in the game, and I listen to a lot of broadcasts. I'd say the YES Network is right at the top and sets the bar.
I appreciate you saying that, JP, and I appreciate you giving me a chance to shout out some colleagues. My comfort level with all the people that I work with is extreme, and my confidence and ability to know that I work with Bob Lorenz 140 games a year. Just a little eye contact, he knows, oh, I want to make another point. Or he's heard me make a point about Garrett Cole's fastball in the past, so he knows enough to say, well, in that Houston Astros game, you talked about Cole not getting his fastball up the ladder. So he's just such a selfless and easy guy to work with. The ex-athletes that I work with, these are guys that I covered. So again, you feel as if you've just taken the conversation you used to have in the clubhouse into the studio. So whether it's John Flaherty, who I covered for a couple of years while he was with the Yankees, Cone and O'Neill and Nelson, those relationships go back to the 90s. So it's awesome to work with those guys. And I will tell you that even off air, JP, if I watch video on a pitcher or video on a hitter, I didn't play the game. So I might notice something. I'll text David Cone. I'll text Jeff Nelson or Paul O'Neill or John Flaherty and say, hey, am I right in thinking that player X on this pitch did Y or whatever? And they're always attentive. And then Michael Kay, I don't want to leave him out. I've known Michael Kay since I was 18. We both went to Fordham. He was graduated by the time I was a freshman, but he used to come back and hang around on campus. We called him a super senior. I think his ability to work with so many announcers is great. And then even Meredith, who's our clubhouse reporter, she is a hard worker and has such a great relationship with all the players. And there's a back and forth with us because she's at the event. And I always respect that the person who's at the event, they're seeing things that you're probably not seeing being in the studio. So it's just a really great group to work with.
Well, you guys are great to listen to, and obviously you bring a lot to the table. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on. It's been great. I'm going to let you get out of here because I know you got a bunch of stuff to do, but thank you for taking the time. Great seeing you. Enjoy the World Series and stay in touch.
Thanks a lot, JP. I love doing this, and it felt as if this was just a conversation from 15 or 20 years ago, so I appreciate the time.
Thanks, Jack.
JP, I can tell you, out of all the batter-ups that we've done over the course of the season and seeing you talk to these insiders and experts, this one today really stands out, not just because of the World Series, because of his legacy covering the New York Yankees.
Yeah, I thought it was appropriate to get Jack on as someone that was close to the Yankees or the Dodgers. And obviously with his history covering the Yankees for so long, no one knows him better than he does. I thought he was, he's very articulate, very astute, and very honest about what his thoughts are and feelings are about the Yankees. So I thought it opened up a little bit of as to what we're going to see coming into the World Series, and his insight as to what the Yankee team is all about was great.
Yeah, it was a perfect guess for this time of the season, and especially for this World Series. That's going to about wrap it up for this week's Brushback. You could follow JP on X and Instagram at RICCIARDI and subscribe to this show on your favorite podcast platform, whether it's Apple, Spotify, Odyssey, iHeart. Just click that subscribe button and give it a 5-star review if you don't mind. And also check out the YouTube channel. So go to youtube.com/Brushback with JP. And you can see the archives of all the shows from this season that we've done so far. They're all there on YouTube. Until next week, when we continue this coverage of the 2024 World Series between the Yankees and the Dodgers, this is John Arezzi for JP. Have a great week, everyone.